It's not every day that we get to talk about candy, and we both have different good reasons to love candy. Louise Mawhinny's here, Carrie. Talk about how we put this together.
First of all, I think I scared her with my enthusiasm for candy. Apologies, she's a little shy. In 2018, when NECCO, one of America's oldest candy companies, went bankrupt, some of the most iconic brands we all grew up with were just, we were afraid they were gone forever. But while others went to established confectioners, the fate of the 88-year-old New England institution, the Sky Bar, was a lot more shocking. It went to a biotech CFO from Edinburgh who owned a gourmet gift shop in Sudbury and had never made candy in her life. So first of all, thank you for saving Sky Bars. And because I used to split them with my mom and they're one of my favorites. But if you are wondering how this happened and how somebody goes from a biotech CFO to a first-time candy manufacturer, you are in the right place today, my friend.
Hi, everyone. Tim Kitzrow from NBA Jam and NFL Blitz, welcoming you to The Backpack Show. Your hosts, Chris Brogan, Carrie Gargone, Boom Shakalaka.
Backpack Show.
Now, your grandfather used to sell candy, yes?
My grandfather sold candy. Yep. He was Pine State Tobacco's #1 candy salesman in Augusta, Maine. He would go all over the great hosted state, the capital state, city, Augusta, Maine, and he would sell candy to all kinds of people. And there's lots of reasons. So Joanne says, I remember NECCO, no Sky Bars. My dad says good morning and hello to Leslie. Leslie, who does her own, makes her own maple syrup, and we've had her on the show before. Louise, we're going to drag you in and start asking you questions right out of the gate. Louise Mawhinny, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here today.
I'm delighted to be here.
So I'm desperate to know, first of all, how does a biotech CFO even hear that this is going on? Like, how do you know where to show up to bid to acquire Sky Bar? Like, what are you doing at the time? And how does this come across your desk? Like, what brought this together? What brought you to Sky Bar?
Well, it was easier than you might think, because before that, in 2014, I had decided that I was going to retire, and I took over a beloved gourmet food shop in Sudbury called Duck Soup that was going to close because the owners were going to retire. So I was already in the confectionery selling business.
You're in the legacy saving business, Louise.
Yes. So it was 2018 was the bankruptcy. Between 2014 and 2018, a huge Sky Bar fan got in touch with me and said, you should be carrying Sky Bars. And because we only have one location, when people say that, we usually go, okay. So I knew about the Sky Bar, even though I didn't grow up with it in Scotland. And so I was kind of watching the NECCO bankruptcy because I was kind of in that industry, and it was on again, off again. And they were going, they were going to sell the whole company. Nobody was going to buy the whole company. And then they had a big auction in their facility in Revere. And they decided they just had bits and pieces left. All the equipment was sold, and they decided to have 2 days of a final auction. And I saw on the TV news the night before the very last day of the very last auction. And the newscaster said, everyone is talking about NECCO wafers, but nobody has bought Sky Bar. And I thought, that's insane. Well, what happened was the next morning, I walked my dogs in the woods in Lincoln. I came back. I made myself a cup of coffee. I was ready to go and open Duck Soup. And I clicked on an email, and it was from this super fan that had me bring in Sky Bars. And he clearly put himself on the email list to update about the NECCO bankruptcy. And it was a link to the auction. And I thought, oh, how cool. I'm having a cup of coffee. I'll just mess around with this. So it said to get into the auction, you had to register. So I registered. I was just having fun. The very first thing that popped up was the Sky Bar. I cannot claim that I had my finger on the pulse and knew what was going on. It was complete serendipity. So I bid on it, and to my shock and horror, I won it. So that's how the whole thing started.
So were you like, oh no?
Yes, I was. And what was even so bizarre was that everything that had gone wrong with the NECCO bankruptcy, that was supposed to be an in-person auction to get rid of tooling and so on, but they lost power. So they had to put it online. I would never have had Skybar if that hadn't happened. So
That's amazing. So a lot of things had to come together for this to happen. Sorry,
Absolutely.
I'm running away because of how much I love candy. You had a question, Mr. Brogan.
I did, because I was the skip over to duck soup in Sudbury, like that was already in the works. Like you weren't sitting there in Scotland somewhere saying, you know what I'd love to do is flip all the way across the pond, land in Massachusetts, and start reviving old brands that were dying. There were a few other choices that had to come in between this. We're making it into this story where one day you were looking at a P&L statement and the next day you buy a candy bar. But there's a couple more nuances, true?
Yep, I came over in 1985. I accompanied my husband, who got a job to work at Raytheon. So we were both Brits. Came over here just with a sense of adventure, and I was in accounting, and I had a wonderful, wonderful career before all of this. I did 2 IPOs. I was in biotech. I had other businesses as well that I was involved with, and I really loved it. But it was getting to the point where it was a huge amount of travel. And I just felt like I probably should change what I'm doing. And I didn't ever intend to go into retail, but I was used to startups. So starting new businesses didn't bother me. And so when Duck Soup needed rescuing, I was there. And when Skybar Candy needed rescuing, I was there. I just 100% underestimated how hard it is to make a candy bar.
I noticed something that I'm a large, round gentleman. I'm not shy of sugar things. I eat more savory than sweet, but I know my way around a Skybar. It was not until I was prepping and reading for this that I read that at least this is the way it used to be. They use Teddy peanut butter. They use Fluff, which is another Massachusetts. This is local ingredients. That's crazy in this world. How did you get with that? Were those people happy that you kept the brand alive, I guess?
Totally. And I never intended to be a manufacturer of candy bars. But the day that my son is the store manager, and he's also the production manager at Skybar, and he's amazing, the stuff he does. He knows more about making Skybars than anybody else, because we had to have a machine specially built. So he understands that machine. But I said to him, hey, Frank, we own Skybar, and he knows how crazy I am. Oh, and this is a guy, we're showing a picture now of a guy this is what happens. People come in and tell their Skybar candy stories in Duck Soup, and he's singing the commercial, 1, 2, 3, 4, Skybar. That's what he's doing at my desk. Anyway, I said, hey, Frank, I own Skybar. And he's like, oh, okay. And I said, we should jump in the car tomorrow and go to Revere, because I really don't know what to do next. So we drove down to Revere, and it was really sad because they still didn't have any power. And there were track marks where all the equipment had been dragged out of the NECCO facility, but the parking lot was full. I said, that's crazy. Why is the parking lot full? Overflow from Logan Airport was using their parking lot. So it was very weird. But anyway, inside the place, we met the former VP of manufacturing. And he said to me, I'm going to put you in touch with Jeff Green. You need to know him. The next day, Jeff Green called me. And he was the former vice president of research and development at NECCO. And that meant he was in charge of every product. And Jeff was a very busy guy that time, because he was working with every single person that had bought any NECCO product. And he was helping them to understand how to make it. And he said to me, well, it's nice to meet you. I'm so glad that you saved the Skybar. And I said, I need to find someone who can make it for me. And he said, I can help you set up a facility if you want to, and you can make it yourself. And I said, how cool is that? How cool is that?
And how scary is that? So were you equal parts scary and excited?
Like when you're taking a roller coaster ride.
Stephen Brogan says, just talking about candy makes me snicker. Sir, we have all the Brogan jokes we need today. He says this is so much fun. So now you've got kind of your person to go to help you get set up. how do you figure out what it is you're going to be doing in there? It's like, here's your facility, go make some candy.
So we were in a strip mall in Sudbury, and come to find out, which we didn't find out until we decided we were definitely going down this path, it was already zoned for light manufacturing, but it had a restriction on size. So luckily we found this out before we started ordering equipment, because the facility had to be 900 square feet, no bigger. And so we had a machine. We had to get a machine that would make the Sky Bar. We got an off-the-shelf packager, but the machine that we had designed for the Sky Bar had to fit into that space, and we had to do everything, all of the production in that small space. So right from the start, I decided I wanted big viewing windows so everybody could see the Sky Bars being made. Because how often do you see handmade candy made, but you don't often see it right into a manufacturing facility. And I wanted to inspire young people, and I wanted young people in Sudbury to start saying, and they are, the Sky Bar is my favorite candy bar, because I knew it had an older audience, and I thought that, yeah, it was going to be easier if they could see what was actually happening.
I should point out that on the socials, Insta and TikTok, it's Sky Bar with an H, because this is New England. So if you're not from here, you may not know, but it's Sky Bar candy.
Right.
Louise, speaking of social, as I'm clearly like just dragging around your Instagram and all that, I feel like there's this whole new world thing. I think like the candy bar is plenty fine, but I'm looking at what says 3X chocolate Sky Bar donuts. So let me just push this button. Look at this. They're showing how to make Sky Bar donuts. So there's many ingredient scenarios here where people are using Sky Bar as kind of a base. How did that all come about?
Oh, that's such a great story, a great story. In 2014, at the start of the year, somebody from the Sudbury community reached out to me and said, hey, we should have a cooking competition and see what people can make with Sky Bars, because we get a really good yield. It's way up in the 90s, 96%, 97%. But that 3% are bars that break when you get them out of the mold. And so we've been selling them. They're a huge seller for us. We sell them in a little takeout container, and we sell, you get about 4 or 5 bars for $1. So people, and it's like a speakeasy. We don't advertise it. And people know if you go past the refrigerators, there's a shelf. And then they come with shopping baskets and they buy this. So, but we just decided it would be so much fun. So in the fall of 2024, we had advertised we would have this competition, and 55 entries showed up. And we had 8 different classes, different categories, like, cakes, drinks, breads, and there were 8 categories. And within the 8 categories, we had 2 classes, one for adults and one for 12 and under. And we got local people within the food industry to come and judge the entrance. And and we had a winner in each category, so 16 winners. Then the recipes were so incredibly good, we put together a cookbook, and we highlighted the ones that were winning, but we put all 55 entries in there, which you can buy in Duck Soup now. And we sent the proceeds to an organization in Sudbury called Hope Sudbury. So we sent all the proceeds to charity, and we still have some for sale. We haven't completely sold out, but it's a once only printing. So once it's sold out, it's sold out. It's a beautiful book, beautifully produced. The first few pages tell you the story of Sky Bar, and then we have all these recipes. So that's where this is coming from.
Can we buy it online, or do we have to go to Sudbury?
Actually, you can. I believe it's on our website. If it's not, it should be, and I'll get it up there today.
Well, if not, then I'll just drive over to Sudbury and scrape all those broken candy bars into a basket along with a copy of it.
Exactly.
And the answer is yes, you
merch.
can buy it online.
Did you see there's merch?
Box of 24. You could buy some hoodies and jackets and a nice, looks like a nearly handcrafted.
There's the book. I see the book.
There's the book. Sky Bar is the limit.
Which is your favorite recipe?
It's impossible because they're so good. There's one that is a flourless chocolate cake that's excellent, but there's so many other ones. And in fact, In Duck Soup, we have cooking classes, and I teach a lot of kids cooking classes. And sometimes if I have a really good class, and I've always got to check for allergies because there's peanuts through everything. And, you know, the equipment has peanut all over it. So it's not like you could break off a section of a Sky Bar and be fine. You can eat a Sky Bar if you have a peanut allergy. So if I have a class that doesn't have that, and they've done really well, I do summer camps. So we have 4 days. Maybe the last day I'll say, would you like to make something from the book? And so then we'll make these. And I have never been disappointed. They're so good, these recipes.
Louise, which part of the Sky Bar do you eat first?
You know what? I start at one end and I just work my way through because I love all the sections. I'm a Cadbury's cream egg type of person, so I love the vanilla. And it's funny, I didn't know until I was doing this that it's a love-hate thing. A lot of people don't like that texture and taste, but I happen to. So I like every section. One thing I want to say about can I talk a little bit about the recipes?
Yeah, of course.
So what I got as part of getting the intellectual property for Sky Bar was I got the recipes going all the way back to 1938. What a gift. Now, at the very beginning, they had different names. So it was English toffee was the caramel, and the vanilla section was nougat parfait or something like that. But we tried these recipes, and because we realized that over time, you know, the chocolate had got not as great, and the centers had got not as great as, you know, time goes on and it just becomes a regular candy bar. We wanted to make it a gourmet candy bar back to where it was when it started. The caramel recipe is outstanding, and it really is a top-notch gourmet caramel recipe. And it wasn't really hard for us to switch to that. So we switched to the original caramel recipe, and we played around with some of the other things. Like you said, we wanted to be as local as possible because we were saving this as an iconic thing from Massachusetts. So we went out of our way to use Teddy. And a lot of the people from NECCO, a lot of the vice presidents had moved over to Teddy anyway. So there was a good synergy there. And the peanut butter, I think, tastes really good. It is quite subtle. Sometimes we get people complain, the bar's all caramel. And then we say to them, well, how many pieces did you put in your mouth at once? Did you really take them all off and try them? Because the peanut is subtle, and you need to eat it on its own. And then there's a sort of an aftertaste of peanut. It's always been that way.
Yes, you should have classes like how to appropriately eat a Sky Bar.
Yeah. How to savor and sample these. And then
yes,
the vanilla,
there's a lesson in there for life, Louise.
Oh, definitely. The vanilla originally had honey in it, and that throws people off because we put the honey back in. So it changed it from the sort of Cadbury cream egg color to sometimes it's a lot browner, and that's the honey. But we think it really adds something. And and the same thing with the fudge. We started off with something that wasn't dark enough for some people's taste, so we, you know, incorporated that feedback and made it into a darker, so it really differentiated from the outside of the bar. For the outside, I remember one of the first times we sat and talked to Jeff Green. He said, well, what do you want to do about the chocolate? Because we weren't going to make our chocolate from cacao beans. We weren't going to make it from scratch. We were going to get it from somewhere. And my assistant store manager said, well, we all like Belgian chocolate. And he jumped on that. And I thought, you can't do that. It's not going to taste right to Sky Bar lovers. But we jumped right in there. And because we got an incredibly delicious and tasty chocolate outside, the centers had to be brought up to the level where there was enough flavor to compete. And like I said, the old recipes did it. The new recipes probably wouldn't have. So, yeah.
I love this story because, like, news-wise, not that anyone else follows candy news, but Brad Reese, the heir of H.B. Reese from Reese's Peanut Butter, was very famously rattling his saber and saying, this is terrible, you guys are making junky food. This Reese's Peanut Butter is nothing like it used to be. You're a bunch of jerks and you're taking money and you need to make this thing taste good. It's not what my gramps did. You are like the exact opposite story. And, I'm not trying to throw dirt on another candy company, but I am throwing dirt on corporate boards who had their reasons why to do what they've done. And in the meantime, you're looking back at these old recipes and bringing it back to this is an act of love, not like a massive profit system. This is, I saw something that really could benefit the world around me, and I wanted to make it happen. That's a beautiful story, I think, Louise.
Well, one thing that our local rep did was Carmen Gentile, who represents our area, he loves Sky Bars. He submitted a bill to make it the official chocolate bar of Massachusetts. And that's in the House right now. So as many people as want to get in touch with their representative and say, go for it, please do that, because we think it deserves it. And it's the only NECCO product made anywhere in New England now, which is, gone from the largest candy company in the country to there's only the Sky Bar left now.
I think what I love so much about this that you've brought it back to what made it great in the first place, because the people that love Sky Bar and loved it years ago love it because of how it tasted. And I'm sure they were like, gee, it doesn't taste the same, like new Coke, old Coke, or whatever, classic Coke.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah,
so
we've
you
had
brought
a
it
lot
back.
of compliments. Oh yeah, we've had a lot of compliments. People who know, they know.
Were there any people who told you this was a bad idea and you should sell it immediately? Like, was there anybody who was scared for you?
I was terrified when I won this, because I thought, who am I? I'm just somebody who's not even originally from this country. So from September, when I got it, I said nothing, because we were going into the really busy season anyway in duck soup. And so it took till January for me to admit what I'd done. And the way it happened was, I was walking in the woods with my dogs, as I did, and I sometimes would meet up with this technology entrepreneur, and we would chit-chat as we were walking around, and I said, guess what? And he paused and he said, that happened last September. He said, how long before you think people lose interest? And I was like, no. And then about a week later, I met another friend in the woods, and I told her, and that weekend, it was in 2019, and that weekend was the one weekend we got a big snowfall in Massachusetts. And on Instagram, Barbara Lynch posted a picture of Sky Bars that she had made because she had got some of the old molds. And she said it was a Sky Bar kind of weekend. And I thought, I have to do something now. So we figured out where we wanted to go. And we decided, I think it was Business Wire, we decided was best for us. And we said, yeah, well, we'd like to pay for all of the media outlets in New England. It wasn't a lot of money. And so I did a press release that said, hey, this crazy person, they bought this. Well, it was so crazy, Associated Press picked it up. My cousin in England saw it on the Daily Mail online. And I mean, they've never heard of me, they never heard of Sudbury, they never heard of the Sky Bar, but the story just took off. Within minutes of the story being released, every news outlet was calling me, and it became this thing. And again, I was still scared that people would say, you've got no right to do this. Grown men came in and cried. I got overwhelmingly, thank you so much for doing this. I don't think one single person said you shouldn't have done it. I've had people critique the flavors, but most of the people love it.
I have forgotten one of my duties, and I will do it really quickly right now, which is that we're kind enough to have some sponsors. So we have Chloe Forbes Kindlin, another Scot, by the way, the one I told you lives not that far from where you were from originally, which I'll have to ask you to remind me. This is Notion. So Notion is a really great tool if you want to figure out better, simple operations, have it all streamlined, put it all in one place. Chloe's got a whole kit ready to go for you if you go to businessops.co/backpack. And our friend Fazia Burke, who has now put together, she's a book publicist. She's done a lot of other work in that field, but she also now has a new Substack that she's started to help AI usage for people who need to get out there and use it to get their message sent. So FaziaBurke.substack.com. that is the exciting part. Is you got the news picked it up, everyone cared. It's a very feel good story. Louise, it's the kind of story that people can get behind. And you've been in biotech, you've been in this whole other realm where either no news is good news, or there's a lot of points of view there. But gee whiz, old timey candy company, you're not even going to get the fight from people who want to argue about, candy, blah, blah, diet, everyone's fat, because this is a nostalgia bar. And your store is set up for this kind of wonderful feeling sort of a thing. So you're not even going to have that fight. So besides people who are arguing about the flavors, and they want some version, this question is going to turn like 90 degrees. How much are people pushing you to try to make new versions of Sky Bar? Or are they just happy having nostalgia?
All the time. And so I would say probably every week someone will come in with this brilliant idea and they think no one else has thought of it. And I am very sympathetic to people who would like a dark chocolate candy bar, or one that is has all their favorite flavor and nothing else. The problem is we bought this very expensive machine and we're running it every single day. And we bought the wrappers, and everything is expensive. So for a tiny little operation like mine, it's just not an option to have to clean out the tanks and change all of that around. Maybe one day when we become enormous and take over the world. But right now, great ideas, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
So we can't get like, oops, all caramel.
No. Well, people will tell me it's all caramel, but we've never actually found one that was all, because the problem is for that to happen, you'd have to have some kind of elf come into our machine and change all the innards, because what we have is a one-shot depositor. It's run by a computer, and there's 4 nozzles. Each nozzle has a hopper with the different flavors. And so they're coming straight into the mold exactly where they should be. For them to cross over to another one would be nigh on impossible. It would mean that there would be, the one-shot depositor does all 4 centers, plus the top and bottom in 1 second. And it's, how much goes down and the suck back and everything is all programmed into the computer. So for me to have a bar that was all caramel, it would have had to squeeze past all of that chocolate in between. And as you know, there's little pouches. That's the shape of the Sky Bar. They're like little things like this. So it's beyond me how it could happen. But
no, Louise, it's magic. That's how it happens.
If they ever actually save the bar, usually when they complain, they've eaten the whole thing. But so it couldn't have been that bad. But if they do save it, and then they take a closer look, they can see they might have made a slight mistake.
As we're wrapping up, while we're talking, my ADD gets the better of me, and I'm scrolling along through Duck Soup, and I'm pretending I'm walking the rows. And I'm first off, you have great taste in chocolates because, of course, there's a lot of Cadbury on the. Everybody who knows that Cadbury is far better than anything that we make in America. We all just have to accept this. Our friend Chloe just came by from Scotland. She brought some Cadbury products. We are all up to speed on delicious Cadbury. But Louise, I turned a corner in your store on your website. How many salt and pepper shakers might one need? Why do you have an entire display of salt and pepper shakers?
You only need one of each, but people want them in different colors. So they'll come in and these things last a while. So typically someone will come in and go, I've had this for 10 years, but now I need another one. So, we do have kitchenware. In fact, Duck Soup started in 1971, and it's been continuously operating in the same place ever since. And when William Sonoma came to Massachusetts for the first time, they literally paid Duck Soup consulting money to find out about the local market. So Duck Soup started as a general store. It morphed into kitchenware as that became the thing. But as you know, these days, even William Sonoma has closed its online, its brick and mortar, most of them, and it's gone online. So fortunately, as the previous owner said, and I can quote him from a Boston Globe article going way back into the 80s, we could have become a coffee shop. We could have become a cheese shop. But if those went out of fashion, we'd be out of business. So he kept his finger in every pie. And we still sell cheese, and we have a huge following for that. We sell bulk candy, like you're showing. Kids will come in with a few dollars and they'll buy their candy. We sell spices by the bulk so that you can just get a spoonful of what you need to try a new recipe. But our best-selling item, other than Sky Bars, is duck soup blend coffee. So 50 years ago, they picked a blend. We don't roast our own coffee, but we blend it. And it's Mocha Java, Colombian, and French roast. And they're so different. It's like a 3D coffee experience. So on our website, during lockdown, we were allowed to stay open because we were classified as a grocery store, but people couldn't come in. So it was just before Easter, if you remember, in 2020. So we literally put every single product in the store online. However, what we discovered then was that we have 20,000 SKUs, not all active at once, but it's very broad, but not deep. So by the time you want to get that particular can of coffee or tea or whatever, we may be sold out. So we're not a good candidate for online selling. We do keep our coffees, and there's a baking line that we actually bought and we own that we sell online. But everything else, you need to come in and see us, because we'll have something really cool like Nido, which everyone's looking for, but we'll sell out the day it comes in, and then it will come back, because we have toys. We became a Hallmark store when the paper store closed down in Sudbury. We can go all over the place.
My dad says, when Diane and I were in Jamaica, an enterprising person asked us our name and then put them, I'm assuming, on a set of salt and pepper shakers, making us feel obligated to buy them. So there you go. An old Jamaican salt and pepper shaker choice.
Great idea.
Something for you there, Louise.
Yes.
Well, as we wrap up today's episode, because I've kept you a minute or so past, my apologies. We have to do a couple quick things and we can get ourselves out of here. I'll do this.
Oh, and here's our person of the day. Kaboom!
Nepotism notwithstanding, I will give it to my dad because he was pretty excited to talk about candy, because that's his dad that was the candy salesman. That entitles you to one free apple, Dad. You just sneak into Sprouts out your way in Las Vegas and just grab one and run. Who's going to know? And then we have one thing we ask every single guest we've ever had on the show, Louise Mawhinny. And the question is really simple. What would you ever add to your backpack? It could be something physical, like a apple. It could be something like a metaphorical thing like hope for the future. Louise, what would you add to the backpack today?
Without a doubt, the Sky Bar.
Call me surprised. But
Didn't see that coming.
nope, not at all. And like I said, my gramps was a candy salesman. One of the coolest times. Oh, and Leslie, who's on the call as well, Leslie Burgess, her dad was also, and they knew each other and worked around each other. Leslie's dad sold video games as well, when the arcade games were the biggest thing. So I would go over to their house and play those like pub video games where you could put your beer on the top. We were kids, so we didn't have the beer, and you play underneath the glass. And her dad would have overly full vending machines, so we'd have to take a few candy bars home. What could you do?
I love it.
But my grandfather definitely, like I said, kept the samples. And the best thing he ever fed me right around Christmas time for candy. Oh, Grandpa was a salesman for Nabisco. See, we all have relatives in this business.
Fantastic.
But you know what they all have in common?
Louise, can I have your Zoom back